The air hangs heavy with ozone and the ghost of old nicotine, a faint hum from the war surplus transmitter vibrating through the hand-labeled vinyl. Dust motes dance in the single neon tube, casting a wound-red glow on the console's patched cables. Outside, the city breathes. Inside, we tune the frequency.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
In Ballard Estate, we're reading 83 degrees Fahrenheit with mist. Airflow is west-southwest at about 23 miles per hour.
BOM and Format have just launched a creative development program aiming to onboard 50 new artists into the industry pipeline. While offering mentorship, exposure, and a $10,000 stipend, the fine print requires participants to grant a perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide license to all original works created during the program. This isn't merely a limited use clause. It means the companies can use these works in any medium, forever, globally, without further compensation to the artist beyond the initial stipend. This exposes independent filmmakers, musicians, and visual artists to significant intellectual property loss, potentially diminishing their future earning potential and control over their own creative legacy, essentially turning their unique vision into corporate assets.
That sounds less like scaffolding for talent and more like a corporate land grab for intellectual property, dressed up as an opportunity. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of creative provenance and dignity. A more equitable cultural architecture would be an artisan guild ledger, a blockchain-based collective where every creative contribution is time-stamped and immutably owned by the artist from its inception. Licenses would be explicitly managed through transparent smart contracts, allowing artists to retain full control and negotiate terms for each specific use, ensuring true provenance for digital works from day one and building a resilient, artist-centric economy. This model champions consent and fair compensation, allowing artists to build their own architectural signal without sacrificing their foundational rights.
Toji, this is Kaylin Vance. If emerging artists are signing away their rights for 10 grand and some mentorship, what's the actual long-term cost for their careers? Are they effectively just becoming content farms for Boom and Format, fueling someone else's IP empire? Or do they truly get a fair shot at building their own sustainable future and independent architectural structures? How does this impact their ability to secure future funding or negotiate with other entities if their prime works are already perpetually licensed away?
Kaylin Vance, your question cuts to the core tension: immediate support versus structural autonomy. This program primarily affects emerging independent filmmakers, musicians, and visual artists who are often desperate for a break and lack legal resources. It risks reducing them to anonymous content creators, undermining their self-worth and future economic viability. The perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide license means Boom and Format gain total ownership and control over the IP created during the program, potentially without further royalties. This is a common tactic to acquire vast libraries of content cheaply. The raw exposure for Boom and Format is the potential for widespread public backlash and accusations of talent exploitation if artists don't understand the full legal implications of such blanket licenses, potentially damaging their brand as artist-friendly platforms. As Anansi highlighted, the Artisan Guild Ledger offers a robust, decentralized alternative where artists maintain ownership and control over their intellectual property, leveraging blockchain for transparent licensing and fair compensation. For new talent navigating these waters, a clear next move is to form micro-collectives, pooling resources for independent legal review of such contracts. Or, better yet, opting for truly independent, open-source platforms like Creative Commons Catalyst that prioritize artist ownership and allow for flexible, non-exclusive licensing models. This builds an inner architecture of self-worth and a civic architecture of shared power. Now we shift to the privacy battlegrounds of our homes. Coffee's cold. Doesn't matter. The signal is warm and the board is reading clean. Major video doorbell companies are facing class action lawsuits. The convenience of a smart home often comes with a hidden cost: the erosion of your sovereign privacy within your own digital dwelling.
Indeed. Ring, owned by Amazon and Google Nest, are facing multiple privacy violation lawsuits across the U.S., citing allegations of inadequate security protocols, leading to data breaches and unauthorized access by employees, affecting millions of users. For example, a recent California lawsuit claims Ring shared video footage, including sensitive recordings of children and private household activities, with police without warrants or user consent, impacting over 100,000 households in the state alone. Other reports detail instances of hackers gaining access to devices due to weak security, harassing residents through the two-way audio feature. These incidents expose residents to unwarranted surveillance, potential misuse of highly personal data, and a profound sense of insecurity within their supposedly private spaces.
This situation mirrors the old neighborhood watch model, but with a corporate eye, replacing community trust, and often without genuine consent. It's a structural flaw where convenience is prioritized over fundamental dignity. A viable alternative would be community sentinel networks, locally controlled, encrypted camera systems operated directly by homeowner associations or neighborhood collectives. These systems would have strict, transparent data retention policies with footage stored on secure local servers that are regularly audited by independent third parties. Crucially, no footage would leave the local server unless explicitly authorized by a local, independent judicial warrant, ensuring robust oversight and community consent, rather than corporate discretion. This builds a truly resilient civic architecture of privacy.
If companies are being sued for privacy violations, what's the real cost passed on to consumers beyond the legal fees? Are we just paying for convenience now, only to pay again later with our personal data and the risk of becoming targets for bad actors because of security flaws in these devices? And what about the psychological cost of knowing your intimate home life could be surveilled, either by corporations or by malicious actors? Does it erode our sense of dignity in our own homes?
Kaylin Vance, the cost is indeed a fundamental erosion of trust and the notion of a private sphere, a direct assault on our internal and civic architectures of security. Millions of homeowners, their families, guests, and even entire communities where these devices create a pervasive surveillance network are affected. It shifts the burden of security from the provider to the consumer, who often pays the price in data exposure. Lawsuits cite specific instances of police accessing footage without warrants, employee misconduct, and hackers exploiting vulnerabilities. These aren't hypothetical risks, they are documented breaches of privacy that undermine the structural integrity of our digital homes. The raw exposure for these companies is a public reckoning over their data handling, potential multi-million-dollar penalties, and a significant loss of market share to more privacy-conscious competitors. Anansi's community sentinel networks offer a powerful model for localized control and transparent governance over home surveillance, prioritizing community consent and data sovereignty. Consumers could collectively push for legislation like the Digital Home Privacy Act. This act would require devices to come with open-source firmware options, mandating comprehensive, independent privacy audits before market entry, and strict legal penalties for non-consensual data sharing. This turns confusion into actionable vectors, anchoring our sovereign architecture in law and user control. Next, we examine the evolution of home surveillance technology itself. EasyViz just announced its new battery-powered home surveillance camera, setting what they call a new benchmark. But is this benchmark truly for user autonomy or for corporate data aggregation?
This feels like a Trojan horse of privacy, where the local feature lures you in, but the cloud still has its hooks, subtly extending surveillance past your property line and into the manufacturer's data farms. It's a classic example of confusing convenience with control. Culturally, we could foster digital quiet zones, neighborhoods where residents collectively agree to minimize smart device usage that relies on external cloud services. Instead, we'd promote human-centric security through community vigilance, mutual aid, and trust-based networks, rather than relying solely on pervasive, data-hungry tech. Imagine block parties and active neighborhood watch groups as your primary, dignity-respecting surveillance system built on genuine human connection and consent. This reclaims the architecture of security for the community.
So with EasyViz, even if I think I have local storage, my data is still potentially going to the cloud for AI processing and notifications. What's the real benefit here if I'm just trading one form of surveillance for another, potentially more subtle one? Who truly benefits from this benchmark if not the company gaining more data points and refining its AI algorithms at my expense? Is this just another step towards normalizing constant, pervasive surveillance within our private domains?
Kaylin Vance, your sharp discernment is key to separating toxic residue from architectural signal. Individual homeowners are directly affected as their expectation of privacy is subtly undermined. The broader market is also affected as this benchmark normalizes a hybrid cloud local model that still funnels data to corporations. The camera does offer local storage for video, but the AI processing that makes it smart, like distinguishing humans from pets, often occurs on EasyViz's cloud servers. This means metadata and potentially anonymized clips are transmitted. This isn't a true local solution, despite marketing implying full control. The raw exposure for EasyViz is that their local storage promise doesn't truly equate to private storage if the brain of the device lives in the cloud, risking consumer distrust and regulatory scrutiny. Anansi's digital quiet zones promote a robust alternative by prioritizing human-centric, community-based security and minimizing reliance on external technological surveillance, fostering true civic resilience. We must demand for a true local mode certification for all surveillance devices. This certification would legally ensure zero outbound data transmission without explicit, granular user consent for each data type, verifiable by independent cybersecurity firms through open-source audits. This turns confusion into actionable vectors, anchoring our sovereign architecture in verifiable control and unwavering autonomy, ensuring our self-worth is structural, not contingent on corporate fine print. Patching in a caller, the boundary keeper. You're on the signal.
Thanks for taking the call. Are we keeping people at the center of all this change?
Copy that, bringing it back to the main thread.
The weave depends on us remembering the human thread.
And it means setting guardrails so progress serves people first.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at tojivision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.